influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Areva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Areva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the voice of reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere.
A federal appeals court expressed deep skepticism today about former President Donald Trump's claim that he is immune from charges of plotting to subvert the 2020 election, suggesting that it is unlikely to rule in his favor on a central element of his defense. As Trump looked on, a 3-judge panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit peppered his lawyer with tough questions about his assertion that his client could not be prosecuted for actions he took while in the White House. And New York City has begun to evict dozens of migrant families that have reached their 60-day limits on stays in the homeless shelter system, the latest effort by the city to urge more of them to leave and find permanent housing. Nearly 70,000 migrants are living in a patchwork of hotels, homeless shelters, and giant winterized tents set up throughout the city of Manhattan. House Republicans will return to Washington, or they did return to Washington today, once again staring down divisions within the conference over how to fund the government. Following weeks of negotiations, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Speaker Mike Johnson announced on Sunday that they had agreed to a $1.66 trillion funding deal that would reduce overall spending by the federal government. But it does so minimally and largely adheres to levels set in a debt ceiling deal negotiated by Biden and then Speaker Kevin McCarthy. The announcement sparked immediate outrage among the hard-right House Freedom Caucus and confusion among other conservatives who said they have yet to hear directly from Johnson about the deal. And Secretary of State Antony Blinken pushed top Israeli leaders in back-to-back meetings today to limit civilian casualties in Gaza, avoid all-out war with Hezbollah militants in Lebanon, and to get serious about planning for what comes after the fighting finally ends. The Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee will invest millions of dollars in an initiative that aims to engage with and persuade voters of color to support Democratic candidates as part of its effort to take back the House majority in November. This initiative, $35 million, will be spent targeting key congressional districts with large minority populations, and this is coming amid growing concerns about minority voters in 2024. And in recent days, Donald Trump and one of his top allies, Representative Elise Stefanik, you remember her, she's the one that grilled Dr. Claudine Gay from Harvard University. Well, she's referred to the federal criminal defendants incarcerated in connection with the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol as hostages, a comparison equating the American judicial system with terrorists and militant organizations. Some relatives of hostages taken during the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel told news outlets that they were offended by the comparison. Now, Donald Trump has also taken to social media calling the insurrectionists hostages rather than prisoners. And amid declining support from Black voters, President Joe Biden was at Emmanuel African Methodist Church, the site of a horrific hate crime in which a white supremacist massacred 9 worshipers in 2015. Now, this is a big, important step for Biden because his campaign is concerned about polls that suggest that Black voters in particular are not enthused about the president's campaign. I want to talk a little bit more about what happened at Mother Emanuel Church yesterday when Biden went there to deliver a speech. And finally, a lawyer for Donald Trump's co-defendant, Mike Roman, this is a co-defendant in that Georgia RICO case, is alleging in a filing in a Georgia court that Fani Willis, the district attorney in Georgia, is in a personal and romantic relationship with Nathan Wade, a special prosecutor in her office and a lead lawyer on the Trump case. The motion asks the judge to disqualify Willis from the case she brought against Trump and other defendants. Now, Roman served as the director of Election Day operations for Trump's 2020 campaign. Interesting to note, in this filing, there were no affidavits, no receipts, or anything to support the allegations of a personal romantic relationship as alleged by Mike Roman. This is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In this hour, I'm joined by two brilliant contributors, Dr. Larry Walker. He's a professor at the University of Central Florida, and Dr. Carlos Hill. He is a professor at the University of Oklahoma. And in hour two today, I have an exclusive interview with a UCLA researcher and professor who is going to drop a new research study that he's been working on for a number of years, because, you know, in this hour, we go deep, we dig behind the headlines, we bring you those stories that people are talking about. And in this case, you're not quite talking about this study yet because it hasn't been released, but what it relates to is policing in America. And we know we always are talking about police brutality, how police communities of color, and the relationship of police with communities of color. So this UCLA professor has done some research, and he has a shocking new report that may forever change policing in this country. So make sure you stick around, because the findings in this report are both alarming and terrifying. But before I bring on my guests, here's what I'm thinking in real time. So I told you a little while ago that President Biden was in Charleston, South Carolina to give a speech at Mother Emanuel Church. That's the church where 9 law-abiding worshipers were gunned down by Dylan Roof, a white supremacist, in 2015. Now, as the president spoke out about how the truth is under assault in America, protesters inside the church started yelling out. One of the protesters said, if you really care about the lives lost here, meaning in the church, then you should honor the lives lost and call for a ceasefire in Palestine. Now, one woman could be heard shouting this, and multiple people then broke into chants of ceasefire now, ceasefire now. Biden, as in his typical way, stood quietly as the demonstrators were escorted out. And after the protesters were escorted out of the church, supporters inside the church, this predominantly Black church, supporters began chanting 4 more years, 4 more years. So you would have thought this kind of ended this. We know that the president, as well as senators and congresspeople, as they are traveling about the United States at this point, there are protesters who are out. Many are protesting and demanding and shouting that Joe Biden and our other elected officials call for a ceasefire. But the war, the battle, the back and forth, the vitriol that erupted on social media, I think is a little shocking to a lot of people, at least to me. When I started to read about the protesters inside the church, I didn't feel too good about it. You know, here's Joe Biden going there. This is sacred ground. 9 people were gunned down, lost their lives for no reason while in a church praying. And if you're Black and if you've been in a Black church, you know, we hold our Black churches as sacred spaces. But I'm also acutely aware of the pressure that is on Joe Biden to call for a ceasefire. So I went to Twitter, X, formerly known as Twitter, to just kind of see what the chatter was. And what I found was shocking. Malcolm Nance, who many of you have probably seen on MSNBC, he's a national security expert. He posted this on X. African Americans now can see exactly how hateful the Free Palestine movement has become. This is not about the Palestinian children. It's about saving Hamas. This is a deeply racist disrespect of the Black American community. I see daily in protests and on X. I support the Palestinian people, but these hipsters, humanitarians, are Hamas's allies. Now, Simone Sanders, also a host and commentator on MSNBC, she posted, Mother Emanuel is hallowed ground in the AME church community and in Charleston especially. The shock of people in the crowd and protesters yelling out while President Biden was speaking from the pulpit cannot be overstated. I, too, couldn't believe it. Now, I don't know, those comments weren't particularly offensive, but boy, if you read the comments that are posted on the thread following statements by Malcolm Nance and by Simone Sanders, you will be, in some ways, just kind of sick to your stomach. The comments demonstrate how divided we are, even those of us who are typically on the same side, even those of us who all call ourselves Democrat. Someone said to Simone, you ignorant scumbag, Palestinian protesters that were yelling at Biden and disturbing the service at Mother Emanuel Church, where 9 Black people were murdered by a racist, can go to hell. Yes, can go to hell. Have some respect for Black people. All of you are disgusting. And they go on to say, F Gaza and you too. And, I won't read any more of these posts. You can see for yourself. But essentially, the post suggests that how dare anyone be outraged by protesters being at this Black church, that this is about genocide, this is about the killing of innocent Palestinians, and that Joe Biden, as the president of the United States, is going to be subjected to this kind of protest everywhere he goes. And how dare any Black person try to tell these protesters not to protest inside a Black church. They see this as an issue of urgency and immediacy, and that there are no sacred grounds, and that Joe Biden and anyone else who is not, capitulating to their commands deserves to be called out. I'm talking to my contributors about this because this debate is interesting, again, because a lot of these are white liberals. A lot of these are white progressives. A lot of these folks are white Democrats. And we have this kind of, I'll call it a family feud that got ugly online, calling someone like Simone ignorant and, just horrible language. Simone is lovely. Let me state that for the record. I love her. She loves me. We're good friends. So I hate to see her being attacked like this. But more importantly, I just want to talk about what is happening even inside the Democratic Party as we are trying to honor the lives of 9 innocent people who were murdered by a white supremacist, and yet to have this kind of vitriol directed at people who just wanted to call out the fact that the Black church is special and important to the Black community. When we come forward, more of today's trending and breaking news right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
Boldly go where no man has gone before.
Boldly taking talk radio where it has never gone before. New vistas, new voices, new views, new visions, new victories. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we're taking public media black.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Follow the leader. Oh my God. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar,
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news, trending topics, and exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to The Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. I'm your host, Robin Ayers. Join me every weekday with some of the best entertainment contributors in the business as we break down what's going on, who's got next, and what not to miss. Only on The Raw Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
There's a new sheriff in town.
All right, I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte, and starting September 18th, I couldn't be more thrilled than invite you to join us for the launch of A More Perfect Union, weekdays right here on KBLA Talk 1580, weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific Time, that's 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. A More Perfect Union promises to deliver national news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. As KBLA Talk 1580's chief national political analyst, every day you can expect your daily dose of political news of consequence. If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered to be a part of the solution to issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, A More Perfect Union was designed for you. This daily political affairs show will feature notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and ordinary people motivated.
We are back, and Dr. Larry Walker and Dr. Carlos Hill are joining me in this hour to help me break down today's trending and breaking news. And in hour two, we're going to be talking about this shocking report that could change the way police neighborhoods throughout this country. So make sure you stick around for hour two. But I want to read something to you, Dr. Larry Walker. Ahead of Biden's arrival, anticipating that there might be protests, the pastor of Mother Emanuel specifically asked for the people attending to show respect for the church by not interrupting. Both protesters who interrupted at the historic Black church, according to some posts, were white. I know there's a separate report out that says at a different angle, there may have been a Black woman who was also called out of the church and was taken out of the church because she might have been protesting as well. And also one of the churchgoers, her name is Susie Jackson, said the protest during Biden's speech at the church was frightening, adding it made them relive the 2015 shooting. What do you make of all of this?
So, Areva, I think this is a really complex issue and requires a lot of nuance. So, first of all, let me say it highlights that Black folks are not monolithic, right? Some of the debates you talk about social media among among family members of the Black community highlights that we don't all think the same based on what other people think. So I think we should get that out of the way. I think that I've thought a lot about this over the last several hours, and I'm quite sure my colleague has also. And let me say, I hate to get in this both sides thing because I never do that, but I do understand. Like I said, this is a complex issue. So the last quote you just highlighted in terms of someone reliving the trauma of which a lot of Black folks we have experienced throughout history in terms of those nine parishioners being murdered by a white supremacist. I do understand that. And also think it's important to acknowledge that Mother Emanuel is, I was raised AME, right? So that it is a sacred place, not only because of the murders, because of its historic history. The other thing I want to highlight is that politicians go to Black churches, Republican or Democrat, for generations. So that is not new. And it's certainly not new for those who are parishioners or those who are visiting to have a disagreement. I think the other side of that is for folks who are highlighting the Biden administration's position on what's happening and what many Palestinians, and recently we saw what South Africa did in terms of the allegations at the UN, are arguing consistent with the with the history of the Black church and the idea of fighting against oppression, and particularly whether it's nationally or internationally. I see where those people are highlighting. Where, if not the Black church, where else? And I get that and understand that. And like I said, this is a more complex issue that requires, like we're doing right now, more nuance. I think that there's really going to be no middle ground. People are either going to say you shouldn't have protested the Mother Emanuel, and those who shade other, you should not. But what I would say is that this is the intersection of race, religion, and also international issues. And that it's important we're blessed to have your platform to have this ongoing conversation. But I have to honestly tell you, this is one of the few issues I really feel conflicted about, and really do understand how folks who agree or disagree with what happened yesterday. I do understand both sides of the issue. I just think the greater issue is to recognize that Mother Emanuel plays an important role in Black activism historically. But it's also the larger international issue about what the U.S. government is doing and turning a blind eye, some would suggest, those protesters would say, as relating to what's happened to the Palestinians.
All right. Okay. So you said it's not both sides, but it sounds like you are saying both sides.
You said
it's nuanced, right? You're saying, let me just be more accurate. You are saying it's a nuanced issue. It's not as simple. It's not black and white. What say ye, Dr. Hill?
And my dear brother is right. This is the most complex international issue there is, the Israeli-Palestinian issue. That's a 75-year, more than that. This goes back hundreds of years, right? So this is complex. And we can't even get into it in a year of your show. We can't get into it all. All right. But for this one particular issue, I think we just got to center those victims and survivors, right, who experienced loss. The church in 2015 experienced the most horrific attack, right? And so if you're in that church, that's what gets centered, is that history, is that experience. Although the issue and the suffering happening in Palestine is as important to Black people as any other history of oppressed people or current history, that history at Emmanuel is sacred, and we're going to always honor that, and that's going to always be centered. And so for me, who studies this and who bears witness to this, even with that going on, we're going to center that, and at the same time say, and there are these issues in the world that relate to it. But the idea that somehow that would eclipse this sacred ground is just untenable. But I think what it does, it illustrates how polarized we are, and how it is a very much either you're with me or against me, be all for me or you're all against me. There is no room for nuance. But what I would say, Areva, just finally, is what we got to really focus on with the Israel-Palestinian issue is, how do we get from suffering to self-determination? That is the only thing we need to be talking about. Stopping the bombing, getting rid of this hostage situation to a place where we can actually talk about self-determination for Palestinian people and for Israelis.
Right. I guess for me, what shook me to my core, what cut deep, was how quickly this became about anti-Blackness. When you read the comments, they were quick to go in on FU. The vitriol directed at African Americans was so, it was just stunning.
The anti-Blackness.
The anti-Blackness. Yeah. The nerve of you Black people to say this is a sacred place, or to tell us where we get to protest. FU pastor of the church who asked them, with all due respect, to not interrupt. It was a complete dismissiveness of his, plea to them. And then online, it just seemed like they were waiting for a Black person to say something that they didn't like so they could go in on this Black person and really let us know how they think about us and how dare us have an opinion about anything. So I think that's what's shocking to me. And I'm with you, Dr. Hill. Our sacrifice, our work on behalf of marginalized people, it's unquestionable. It's unequivocal. We got the receipts. We need not do anything else to try to prove that. And if in one church service for one 30-minute segment, we ask protesters to please hold your protest, and for them to have that kind of response says that's coming from someplace else. This ain't about the Palestinians. This seemed to be a lot more about us and putting us in our place and reminding us that we don't really get to say anything about anything that anybody in this country does. And that's what was so shocking to me. Biden was going to walk out the doors of that church. Have at it. Protest all day and all night. Biden's going all over this country campaigning. Have at it. So if for one 30-minute period where a president is making a speech to recognize the lives of people that were gunned down for no purpose, I don't know how you call us an ally. I don't know how you think you are with us, because as allies, we got to be able to respect that in this moment, maybe it's not the time or the place. And all organizers, I'm one, I've been on the streets, and sometimes it just ain't, shut up, stand down. That is a concept in organizing. We do that.
Reva, that's the most anti-Black thing for an ally to do. That's it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just want to jump in here really quickly. Like I said, I'm not usually, I usually when I'm pretty firm on one side or the other, but I got to admit, this is one time. Like I said, I'm AME. So this is very, for me in particular, it's very personal when I think about, being raised. But I think that your point about anti-Blackness in social media, that's a whole nother conversation we need to have. Let's be honest. I feel like I would, repeat G Money from New Jack City. We all we got. So because Black folks, we are all we have in any fight historically, and it's ongoing.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just, like I said, the vitriol directed at us, F the dead, I mean, it just went off. And like I said, it had to be coming from someplace other than just, their cries for a ceasefire. Oh, it was a lot going on in that debate. When we come forward, the word hostage has come up. We're going to talk about the word hostage because it is being used to describe people who were tried through our criminal justice system, who were convicted and who are serving their time, something that happens every day in our criminal justice system. Nobody's ever referred to anyone serving time in a U.S. jail or prison as a hostage yet. Donald Trump and his, one of his key supporters, Elise Stefanik, have figured out a way to call these criminals hostages. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Areva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Areva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the voice of reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the voice of reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 15.
Like a brand new flavor in your head.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
Boldly taking talk radio where it has never gone before. New vistas, new voices, new views, new visions, new victories. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we're taking public media black.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Follow the leader. Oh my God. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
The bounce is back.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news, trending topics, and exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to The Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. I'm your host, Robin Ayers. Join me every weekday with some of the best entertainment contributors in the business as we break down what's going on, who's got next, and what not to miss. Only on The Raw Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
There's a new sheriff in town.
All right, I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte, and starting September 18th, I couldn't be more thrilled than invite you to join us for the launch of A More Perfect Union, weekdays right here on KBLA Talk 1580, weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific Time, that's 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. A More Perfect Union promises to deliver national news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. As KBLA Talk 1580's chief national political analyst, every day you can expect your daily dose of political news of consequence. If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered to be a part of the solution to issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, A More Perfect Union was designed for you. This daily political affairs show will feature notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and ordinary people motivated to do their part to reach beyond today's divisions, to make sense out of news of the day, and offer us all a chance to build a more perfect union. Come on and join me.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA.
We are back with today's breaking and trending news. And in hour two, a groundbreaking study published in the winter edition of ISIS, the nation's premier journal for the history of science and medicine, has found that a process, a tactic used by police departments around this country is not as benign as we have been led to believe for decades. We're going to talk to the author of that study and find out how it is that police departments are using something routinely in police work and policing of America that could be killing or leading to the deaths of millions of people. So make sure you stick around for hour two. All right, Professor Hill, you know, the families who have hostages in Palestine who are still wondering and waiting and praying and hoping that their loved ones are alive and that they may come home one day, rightfully so, were offended. I'm not so sure we heard the kind of outrage that we would expect, but yes, there were people who were offended when Donald Trump and Elise Stefanik, again, that's that New York congresswoman who is trying to take credit for the ouster of Dr. Claudine Gay, Harvard's first Black president, seemingly running for vice president, trying to get Donald Trump's attention. But she was on national television over the weekend saying that her heart went out to the hostages. And she's not talking about those in Palestine. She's talking about the individuals that were seen on videotape breaking into our Capitol, crashing windows and doors and chanting, "Kill the vice president." Those folks who were rightfully prosecuted under our criminal justice system, and now many of whom are serving jail time, some prison time, she and Donald Trump are calling them hostages. I guess since we were quoting a movie earlier, I'll ask, how low can we go? Let's just start there.
Well, I would say, Areva, how low can we go? But it's also how high can we raise the stakes? Like we're going low, but we're raising the stakes because at the same time that we're not holding Donald Trump accountable, that's the going low. He's potentially going to be our next president if you mind the opinion polls and all of the tracking of voters. Like, who is leading amongst voters? It's Donald Trump amongst Republican voters. And so we have a situation where someone who we know who has said things that are insurrectionist, supported it, but yet has millions of people supporting. And so, having this person, affirm that or help us to understand the ways in which we're going down this really, really black hole. I'm going to call it a black hole because there's nothing good there. And there's nothing good that's going to come from us affirming a criminal who's shown he will do anything just to have power, not use it in a certain way, but just to have power, not even to use it in a certain way. And so if that's not alarming to people, then we have deeper issues in our society.
Yeah, I guess, Professor Walker, why was there more outrage? So Elise Stefanik, who, wants us to believe she's the biggest protector of Judaism and, the biggest opponent of anti-Semitism, as she tried to demonstrate during those hearings, yet where is the outrage about this analogy or this comparison? It always puzzles me how folks get worked up about some things and not so worked up about other things. For some, again, if you're at home hoping that your loved one would come home, hoping that they're not dead, hoping they haven't been tortured, raped, or beaten in any kind of way, to think that someone who's gone through the legal process and is not been tortured, is not being held against their will, has had due process as all other defendants that are, most of them that are sitting in our criminal justice system, wouldn't this be shocking to you?
Yeah, it should be shocking in a society that that believes in democracy and fairness. But let's be frank, we are not there. I think the other point is about, we're having this conversation, this philosophical conversation about tenets about honesty and fairness. But I think it's important to note that in America, truth is dead, right? We're really talking about propaganda. And I think for those who are watching, listening, they need to really understand what is happening here. You heard all those falsehoods she put out about January 6th, insurrectionists. Many of those, hundreds of those individuals have pleaded guilty, right? And I just saw someone was, sentenced to 4.5 years for temporary blinding a police officer. The Republican Party is no more, they're not pro-police anymore. They're pro-power. And I think people need to differentiate between democracy and power in our society. This is not about democracy. This is maintaining power. We've seen it at the state level where they've gerrymandering states where they had permanent power. So now what is trying to happen at the federal level. And that's why you see the kind of language was used. And yeah, there was some pushback, certainly, and concern. But let's remember here that, Trump was elected, in 2016. And, Biden beat him, he won the Electoral College in 2020, but it wasn't like it was an electoral blowout. So, and then we see, I just saw the Detroit Free Press, a poll just came out that shows Trump winning by 8 points. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, but that is a serious concern for anyone who knows how important Michigan is. So the point of, I'm going to go back to the point is, there are not enough people who are concerned about the racist, anti-democratic rhetoric that's coming from the Republican Party. And if we're not very careful, our last true democratic election will be this year. And we're trending in a very troubling direction. And once again, I'll remind folks, the language they're using is the kind of language you see propagandists use, okay? And it's not about truth, because we're talking about, we're concerned about truth, but these individuals are controlled about propaganda and power. And I think it's important to understand that.
Well, it's very important that people understand the difference between propaganda and truth. And we know one of the things that's happening is that this constant drumbeat of polls that show Donald Trump winning is becoming a talking point, not just on the right, but amongst some Democrats. And one of the things we have to guard against, Professor Hill, is, giving in to the propaganda and ourselves starting to repeat it, starting to believe it, and getting discouraged and becoming, apathetic and becoming disconnected from the process, as if it's a foregone conclusion that Donald Trump is going to win. And when you ask people, why is he going to win, in light of everything that we can sit here and list, from calling, legitimately incarcerated people hostages, to saying that the first thing he's going to do is indict Joe Biden. Now he's going to indict Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton probably as well, and then dismantle the Department of Justice. So once he indicts all of his enemies, his political enemies, then he has no more use for Department of Justice, the FBI, et cetera. So when you remind people of that, I just don't know how honest these pollsters are. And you have to ask yourself, are they telling people in the poll, are they running down the list of things that Donald Trump, not us, but Donald Trump himself, is saying he's going to do for the country? So if you run down that list of things that he says he's going to do once elected, do you really think people are still saying, yeah, that's my guy, I'll take him over Joe Biden in a heartbeat? I just think we have to be smarter than that. And we can't, as Democrats, buy into, the propaganda of polls and the fact that the media is complicit. They got to sell newspapers. They've got to keep viewers watching. And the way you do that is like you do a heavyweight fight or a Super Bowl game or any other big sporting event. You've got to make it interesting. And that's a lot of what we're seeing in the media right now are efforts by corporate media to make it interesting. But those of us that know the truth, like I said, I don't know a person that if you ran down that list, even a conservative person, that would say that that's the guy they want to vote for. But when we come forward, we're talking about Eric Adams. Eric Adams seems to be really struggling with this issue of migrants and now telling 70,000 that they have to leave their shelters and, places where they've been living with the hopes that they're just going to leave New York City. Is this going to work? Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the voice of reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the voice of reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head.
We boldly go where no man has gone before.
Boldly taking talk radio where it has never gone before. New vistas, new voices, new views, new visions, new victories. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we're taking public media black.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Follow the leader. Oh my God. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
Bounce is back.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news, trending topics, and exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to the Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday.
New York City is in the process of evicting dozens of migrant families that have reached their 60-day limit. Now, that was a limit imposed by the mayor of New York, Eric Adams, and that was how long a lot of these migrant families were given to stay in homeless shelters that had been set up all around the city. And now 70,000 of these migrants who have been living in hotels and shelters and big tents are being reshuffled. And Larry, you're back east, and well, you're in Florida, so it's not technically the Northeast, but
I'm from the Northeast, so.
Okay, so it's dead of winter. Yeah. How cold it is, and if you are a migrant family, if you have a small child, if you have small children, how difficult it is to be pushed to the outskirts of a city. We see that happening in Chicago as well. Lots of folks being pushed to the outskirts. You're further away from public schools, public transportation, and lots of other city services. And not, obviously this migrant issue, not created by Eric Adams or Brandon Johnson in Chicago. This is all about Southern governors trying to make a point, political points, shipping innocent people to places like New York and Chicago and Boston and Martha's Vineyard. But these are real people. And now these big city mayors are having to deal with this. And this, talk about difficult and nuance. Here you have this mayor who's been struggling on so many fronts with a bigger, you can see the headlines. Some baby dies on the streets of New York because it's freezing cold, or some mother, has some kind of catastrophe because she's out on the cold. What does Eric Adams do, Dr. Walker?
I got to tell you, this is a difficult situation. First of all, we need a comprehensive immigration plan, but that's a bipartisan problem. And, Areva, I'm a former Hill staffer, and we've been dealing with this issue for decades. So that's first, right? And so, yeah, it's a callousness in terms of what you see from the governor of Texas sending these people to Chicago and New York, even now surrounding suburbs in the middle of winter when it's cold. And you're right, I'm from Philadelphia, spent a lot of time like you in New York City, and it's cold. Okay. And so you're right. And listen, I'm not a big Adams fan, but I do sympathize with the fact he's got a huge political problem. And there's really no answer to it. 70,000 people that's a town, right? And so we know New York City is the largest city in the United States, but 70,000 people who are just kind of, not even acclimated to the area, you kind of just dump them there. It's a major, economic and political challenge. So, but let's be clear in terms of being a human being, the idea you're going to have these people to kind of just check out, like they're checking out a hotel and we wish you well and wherever you're going. It's not realistic. And you're right, politically, considering he's already got enough issues with the federal government, among others, essentially just kind of evicting these people in the middle of winter, something bad would happen, and he's going to risk. I know he wants to get reelected, but he's going to find himself as kind of the face of what it means not to treat people like human beings.
Yeah, I think the problem, Dr. Hill, is obviously, ironically, the immigration issue is getting pinned on Democrats. We saw the current Republican speaker take a big delegation to Texas and, so-called watch migrants coming across the border. And the reality is Republicans, like on gun control, refuse to take up any kind of legislation. Their only solution to this is more border control, as if you can just add thousands and thousands of officers at the border and this is going to solve the issue. We know we need immigrants in this country. We need them for so many of the jobs that are done, particularly in states like California and Texas and Florida, New York in particular too. So this is a very sensitive issue. And unfortunately, it's making these big city mayors look pretty bad.
Well, Reba, this is such a deep question. This is a question about who are we? We accept refugees, asylum seekers. We have in Oklahoma just this year over 200 people from Afghanistan, a war that we created. Refugees, real refugees from Afghanistan coming to Oklahoma to find refuge. So we do this all day, every day. What's happening on the border is politicized. And so they have created such a ferment of resentment around the border that you cannot help people who need it. And so the ways in which we've become so polarized because it's the border, we already help people. Even though in so many ways, this issue is something that we do, we've made it something that we it's polarizing. We do this already. Can we figure out how we can make this less?
Yeah, it seems like as a country, as you said, that is, historically has always welcomed immigrants. New York in particular. I mean, think about New York. New York has been the ultimate melting pot. And now to see a New York mayor, in the crossfires, turning people out into the cold, just seems like there has to be another way, like you said, more humane way. These are individuals, these are people. It's not, the solution is not what we've seen Mayor Eric Adams do, which is point the finger at the Biden administration, because the Biden administration's hands are tied on this as well. Like the student loan debt, some of these issues are congressional issues, but obviously when you're the president, everything gets blamed on you. And we need to do a much better job, which is why I'm happy to hear, Dr. Walker, this $35 million, not nearly enough, but at least a good start, of money that's going to be targeting the Black and brown communities, all about congressional races, because Congress, who's in Congress matters. If you want to have immigration reform, if you want to have gun control, if you want to, get a bill that makes universally available abortions, we need a different Congress. We need a Congress with a Democratic majority. So this effort to target folks, to educate them about Congress, is really important in this moment. I know you've worked on the Hill, and I'm sure it's frustrating to you that so many people don't pay attention to those races, and we end up electing people, and not because everybody goes out and vote. It's because the people that don't vote, and we end up with horrible representatives in Congress.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, obviously you see Congress is going to, is going to negotiate some kind of reasonable CR based on what was negotiated when McCarthy was Speaker. But you're right. And one of the things I want to note is in terms of, Black political power, the CBC is currently at 60, which is the largest number that CBC's ever had. I'm a former CBCF staffer and congressional fellow. So that's important because those people are going to represent the Black community, and Black empowerment is really important. But you're right. We really need folks to pay attention here because, I know we have attention to overstate things, but we're at a tipping point. And whether it's your city council race, mayor race, member of Congress, you have to really pay attention, be engaged, and vote, and to get members of particularly members of the Black community, have to go out and vote. We don't vote at a high enough percentage, and I understand there's some other issues about that, but we have to get out and vote and show our political power, or it could lead to our eventual doom.
Yeah, and you're right. People are tired of hearing us say this is the most important election of your life, and this one, really matters. They all matter, of course, but we really are in this country right now fighting for the soul of this nation, as Joe Biden liked to say, and democracy is on the line. I mean, truth is on the line. Our freedoms are on the line. And we all have an obligation. We all have a duty to make sure that to the extent we can cause other people to appreciate what is on the line, that we are doing that each and every day. And I said we have to reject the narrative around these polls. Again, I just can't state enough. We know polls are inherently flawed. We know they're not talking to a lot of the same folks that we are talking to. We know that they are slanted in a way that can cause people to get the desired answer that they want. And we know that in the past, they failed us. So, it's no time for us to get nervous. It's not time to get scared. It's time for us to get busy. And that's busy with the work of letting everyone that we know how important all these races are. Congressional races, the Senate is up. That's important. These state houses, those races are critically important. So we got a lot of work to do. And it's just January the 9th. I'm already tired. We are out of time. Thank you so much, Dr. Walker. Thank you, Dr. Hill. Always a pleasure to be in conversation with both of you. I'm a lot smarter as a result of spending the last hour with you. Make sure you stick around for hour 2, because something that police do on the regular that seems pretty innocuous, pretty benign, is according to this new report, deadly. So we'll be out with that new exclusive interview with the researcher and writer of this really critical report on policing in America. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580. Thanks, guys.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation